Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Soumitra Ghosh. I'll be facilitating the session on today's session on building credibility of NGOs. As usually today also we got a very good response from different NGO sector, and it's also the participants list is also a good mix of the NGOs and the businesses, and it's a pleasant surprise for me to see that many business bodies are also interested to have a discussion on credibility and NGOs credibility in particular. So today is the last session in the series what was planned for NGOs, particularly following another series which was actually conducted for the corporates on broadly corporate social responsibility, business responsibility, participation of business, NGOs, government in the development segment. Also, we discussed about the Corporate Social Responsibility Act. We discussed the conceptual, we had a session on conceptual discussion of corporate social responsibility itself. So today, I think the most important session, what we are going to now start is on credibility, and credibility in particular with reference to, with a particular reference to the NGOs. Now, as you can understand that today more and more there is a kind of expectation from different stakeholders of the NGOs that NGOs come up in a more transparent manner, they demonstrate accountability, and also they would be answerable to the multiple stakeholders. So we can see that with the increased access to information, people are becoming more aware. People actually know there are more scope for collaborations and participation of different segments in development sector. That transparency and mutual trust has become very, very important. So the central, the element, the core element of credibility is what I think is mutual trust and confidence. Now, if you see the NGO sector has a very strange matrix of accountability, because the relationship between the source of fund and the impact, the sphere of impact is not linear in particular case of NGOs, because in most of the cases the NGOs take money from somebody, and without giving them a financial return to the investors or the donors or the grant makers, that creates an impact to a different set of people, what we call participants, may call it beneficiaries or whatsoever. So the source of the resources coming from one origin, and actually the sphere of impact is not linear in the case of NGOs. In case of businesses and other kind of organization, it's more linear, because if it is a case of business, if the investors are giving money to a business, investing money to a business, then definitely they have a financial gain out of that, and this is a kind of give and take relationship. And if we invest some money, definitely we will expect some kind of return out of that in financial term itself. But in NGO sector, definitely it is not a financial return. Probably the return is in a different manner what the donors and the investors, if we can call them, would expect out of that. At the same time, what happens is that NGOs are answerable and accountable to multiple stakeholders. It is definitely accountable to the donors, it is accountable to the government, it is accountable to any person in the society or the community, it is accountable to the community, it is accountable to the media. So there is a kind of multiple accountability matrix has emerged for the civil society organization. But if you see that evolution of NGOs, now, till now, probably many NGOs, in fact, I was having a discussion with one international NGO, I mean, the Indian counterpart of the international NGOs, about accreditation. Uh, so these organizations said, the NGOs, they should actually determine what they should do, how they should do, and whatever the way they want to do that. So that, why they should have a certification for anybody else, that whether they are doing a good work or not, whether they are the way they are doing it is something fair or not. Now the question remains that, as a civil society organization, whether you are also accountable to multiple stakeholders, or you hold yourself accountable, so that you really think that, whatever you are doing, it is legitimate, whatever you are doing, it is on behalf of the people, so that you don't need to really answer to anybody else. But in today's world, definitely we see that, the NGOs will have to come up as a more transparent and accountable manner, and also they will have to demonstrate accountability. So one thing is that being effective, being efficient, being sustainable, being good at your work, and the second thing is that how do you build the trust and confidence, in that complex multiple shareholder matrix. So this is the question. Definitely, I find that many NGOs are definitely doing good work, but at the same time, the challenge remains that how they would demonstrate and establish that mutual trust and confidence. With that, today, what we'll be discussing is that demonstrating accountability, that is the first part. Second thing is, we'll see that, being transparent as an element of being credible organization, how one organization could be more transparent, how we could actually make the organizations more visible, and then we'll talk about the NGO accreditation systems as it is there in India and globally, and we'll see that different systems and processes of NGO accreditation as it is there in India and internationally. As usually, what we'll do is that as and when I will request you to please post your question as and when you feel like. Whenever I will get some time, I will definitely look at the questions and try to address those questions and issues. Now, definitely, as I started discussing about this growing demand for transparency and accountability. Now, the first thing, probably the most obvious factor in this is that the huge amount of money being invested in the NGO sector, either by the government, by the business, or by different private funders or donors. It might be international, it might be national. So that when the NGO sector is receiving money, and they are supposed to do some work and show the result, definitely the question of transparency and accountability has become very, very strong. And as if you look at the total inflow of money in the NGO sector, definitely it has increased significantly than before, so that the donors and even the other stakeholders has become very, very conscious that what exactly is happening with that money and what kind of impact the NGOs are creating. As you see that the corporate sector, as we have already discussed, that we are assuming that the corporate sector will invest 15,000 to 18,000 crores to the sector in this financial year. Foreign contribution to the voluntary sector on an average, the last year's trend, we can see that around 10,000 crore. Government on an average provides 950. This is not a complete data. This is 950.62 crores because the government data is not available and there is no consolidated database that how much money they are actually giving as a direct grant to the NGOs through the state government and the central government, and there is a difficulty to get the data. But my assumption is that it would be few multiples of this figure what has been shown here, and it is much more than the much more than the foreign grant and even the investment what we are expecting would be made by the business sector. So that in totality we see that it's a huge amount of money. It's quite a bigger, significant amount of money is being invested in the NGO sector. So definitely when it comes to money, then the NGO sector will have to come up with more transparency and they need to become more accountable. Now, having emerged as the protagonist of transparency, the NGOs by itself as a sector, we are protagonists of transparency. We, ask others that they need to be transparent, they need to be accountable, what the government is doing, what the business is doing, so that definitely when we are asking question about the other sectors will actually ask the counter question, and we need to first come up clean and be confident and have and enjoy the trust to before asking any question to the other sector. Now, across spectrum, donors, public, community media, corporate, government, etc., there is growing demand for NGO transparency. And also, if you see that, if you look around, if you ask some people in the government who are not in the NGO sector, who are in the business sector or in the government sector or any other sector, there is a kind of very ambiguous perception about the NGOs. Definitely there is a kind of do-gooders perception. People think that NGOs are doing good work, they are conscience keepers, they are doing for well-being for the society. But at the same time, people are not so confident about the NGO sector's integrity, about the kind of impact the NGO sector is creating, the efficiency of the NGO sector, what kind of performance they are doing. So there is a kind of ambiguous perception about the NGO sector. And today, in the age of information technology, definitely, the challenge has become more prominent. The NGO sector becomes more transparent and provide more information, share more information, and create a more accountable image or impression, perception about themselves. Now, this is a very interesting question, the question of legitimacy of NGOs. Now, I hope you would agree with me that in most of the cases, the NGOs are self-proclaimed representative of the people. Now, my background, I have a long background with the NGOs, so that, it is a kind of, if you look at ourselves, sometimes, and if you look at little dispassionately to the NGO sector, we really claim that, we work for people, we represent people's interest, people's aspirations, but definitely, in most of the cases, the NGOs are really not representative bodies of people. Definitely, they are not elected or selected or nominated by people. NGOs, few people, they decided to do something, good for the people, for the community probably, and they established an institution, they came together, and they definitely, probably they understand the community, they understand the society, whatever they do or whatever they say, probably on behalf of the community, but at the same time, that debate will remain, that whether they are really representative of the community or society, whether we should say that we are representative or representative of the community, but at the same time the issues might be legitimate, so that if we are talking about, say, corruption, and we are having a campaign against corruption, definitely the issue is legitimate, but at the same time, is it that we are voicing, we are being representative for people? It might not be. Definitely, you cannot say that we are representing all of the people who are, against corruption or who are, there in the country. So now, if you see that, the other factors is that we have probably the largest number of NGOs in the world as a country. Government is saying that we have around 3.5 million NGOs, but at the same time, as I said before also, that I believe that probably, if there is 1/3 of that number of NGOs who are active and effectively working, I would say that that's a huge number of NGOs, because this number is inflated, because as we know that, all kind of organizations are registered under the acts of, the Society Registration Act, the Trust Act, or whatever the company section 35, so that, by legal definition, we'll have to call them, we'll have to club them at least with the NGOs. So probably we got that inflated number through that way. But at the same time, as I said, that if there's only 1 million NGOs who are really active and who are working for in the development sector, I would say that that's a huge number of organizations, and that even that might be the largest number of organizations in a country. Changing roles of NGOs, I mean, this is very important, because if you see that traditional role, what we have been discussing, before also, that NGOs' role have been changing with the change of the context of market, with the change of the context of the governance of the country. So that NGOs, if you see that, probably when primarily they were working for people, there is a lot of we have different kind of histories. We have histories from from social activism. Many NGOs have come up. We have seen that many NGOs were started as the charitable organizations who were doing philanthropy and charity. Many organizations had a kind of religious background. So different kind of roles NGOs have been traditionally played. But today we see that significant number of NGOs, they are taking a very different role to play in the present market scenario. Like today, we are interacting actively, getting engaged with businesses. We are also proactively getting engaged with the government system. Many NGOs are questioning the government system whenever it is required. Many NGOs are questioning the integrity and accountability of the government, the businesses, so that we are also changing. The NGO sector is also changing, so that it is more when we actually change and more become engaged with different sectors. Definitely we need to be more transparent and accountable, and we need to demonstrate it if we really want to enjoy the trust and confidence. The third aspect is the growing role and influence of NGOs. Now definitely we see that one is that impact and another is the influence. So probably I wouldn't say that before NGOs didn't have the impact, or before that NGOs were not so impactful or effective. Probably at that particular context, at that particular time, the NGOs were appropriately effective and impactful. But today we see that as NGOs are interacting more with the other sectors, and they are actually taking up more critical issues like governance and other things, more and more the NGO sector is becoming more influential to the other sectors also. For example, the kind of influence on business by the NGOs today's world, what we are experiencing, definitely that kind of influence was not really visible in the previous days. So that when we are trying to influence the other sectors and NGOs are becoming prominent player, NGO sector as a sector becoming a prominent player in the market scenario, in the governance scenario, definitely the NGOs will have to share that confidence of the stakeholders to see that it's a kind of legitimate influence they are trying to exert in the other players in the domain. Now, as I said, the aspect, as we see that legitimate and representative issues, we see that the influence issues, and how we need to become the NGOs need to become more transparent. Another thing, as I said, that people have a very ambivalent perception about NGOs, about their performance. Now, okay, there's a kind of perception, if you see that, unfortunately, that okay, NGOs are do-gooders, they have all good intention to do, but probably they are not so professional, they are not so efficient. That's the kind of perception many people still having, at least people who are coming from different sectors. So definitely when we are talking about credibility of an organization, with accountability, representative issues, representation issues, with transparency and other things, definitely one thing to demonstrate and to create that mutual trust and confidence is that NGO sector is efficient and effective, so that whatever the money is being spent, that has created appropriate results and impact in the society, what was intended for. Now, if we summarize the discussion till now, we see that there are the three major dimensions of accountability. Is one, transparency. Again, transparency is an issue where it is something, we say that, okay, we are, very good, we are honest, and, we are very sincere, we are a credible organization, but unless and until we create the transparency that people can access the information and we are actually disclosing the information in public domain and sharing it with different stakeholders, then definitely we will not demonstrate transparency, and we are not doing justice to the NGO sector itself, because unless and until we talk about our good work and we are becoming open access for information, definitely people will have different kind of perception and we cannot influence that perception in a proper manner. Second thing, what we discussed about legitimacy, definitely they are concerns keepers, the NGOs are concerns keepers, they have an image that they are do-gooders, they stand for the justice of people, but at the same time we need to see that what kind of legitimate issues we are getting into, and what kind of, and then the debate remains that whether the NGOs should really position themselves as representative of people, or they should actually say that the issues they're raising, those are legitimate issues which reflects the aspiration and interest of people. So there's this reflection versus representation. I mean, that debate probably would remain. Definitely many organizations who are not community-based organizations, they definitely are not representative. Even many community-based organizations are not per se representative if you look at structurally and process-wise. The third part, the very, very important part is the performance. That whatever we are doing, whether we are actually creating impact, and it is a sustainable and meaningful impact we are creating by using that money, whatever we are getting from different sources. So these are the three different aspects of dimensions of accountability when we need to keep in mind when we talk about credibility of an NGO. So another big question now, whenever we talk about accountability of an NGO, so in most of the cases, actually, people immediately, the thing comes in our mind is that accountability to the donors, because the NGO sector is taking money from different donors, so that primarily sometimes, NGOs think that they are accountable to the donors. Definitely, they are accountable to the donors, they are accountable to the government, they are accountable to the peer organizations, even they are accountable to themselves, to their trustees, their staff, their own value system. But at the same time, what we need to understand that NGOs are primarily accountable to the society, to the community they are working for, whom they claim that they are representing, So definitely the primarily NGOs should demonstrate accountability to the people they are working for. Now, unfortunately, what happens in most of the cases when we talking about transparency definitely is not accountability. I mean, we need to understand that transparency is probably a vehicle to demonstrate your accountability, but accountability and transparency are not the same thing. Now, whenever we are talking about accountability, when we talk about accountability, we need to understand that how best that vehicle has been used to demonstrate our accountability, at least for the people we are working for, the NGOs are working for. Now, one thing definitely what you probably have been observed, and you would agree that in most of the cases, when the NGOs prepare any report, they publish any report, for which audience they publish and prepare the reports primarily. What kind of information access the people of the community have, are enjoying. If we see that, one annual report, what one NGO has published, do you think that any, very, very few, unfortunately, very, very few organizations, NGOs in the NGOs, Indian NGOs, publish the annual report in local language? Now, these are the small things, but these are very significant things we need to realize that if we are not creating that kind of information system, definitely, there are organizational aspects, there are different aspects. Definitely, you don't have to share everything with everybody. And also as an organization, probably many of the organization, being it in a college, university, NGOs or whosoever, as a structured organization, in most of the cases, it is not a democratic organization. But when you are talking about people, when you are actually primarily existing for people's purpose, then definitely you need to create that kind of access to information and being transparent to people if really you want to, if the NGOs are serious about creating credibility of that particular organization. As I said, in many cases, what I have seen, that in most of the cases, in fact, I have seen, to be straightforward, that NGOs probably are most not, not so transparent when they share information with the community and the society. Probably the most important, as you know, that practically what happens is that the most important segment to whom they feel that, we need to actually demonstrate accountability is the donor segment, and definitely to the government, because you will have to have the tax exemption, you will have to submit your reports to the registrars and so on and so forth. So definitely we need to understand that the primary accountability lies with toward the community and the society, and then definitely to the other stakeholders. Now, as I said, that till now, when we talk about sharing information, till about demonstrating accountability, practicing transparency, we see that it is either incentivized by the funding opportunities or by regulatory coercions. That is what exactly we are discussing. That as the donor agencies, they demand certain kind of financial reports and activity reports. The first thing, that probably the most important aspect in transparency and accountability what the NGO world is doing till now is in terms of donor reporting. Then definitely, as I said, that they will have to be accountable to the government, because they will have to maintain the legal status, they will have to maintain their IT exemption status, so that definitely that part comes. So today we need to understand that this is not enough, and in fact it is not about answering, it is not about coming clean to people, but it is all about how do you actually create a bigger constituency for your cause. For example, if I am working on in NGO sector and I am working for a cause, like say, for example, child labor, we definitely understand that the cause of child labor is not confined within that particular small area where we are working as an individual organization. So if you really want to create that broader constituency for that particular cause, definitely you will have to create that kind of mutual trust and confidence and engage a larger constituency for that particular cause. So it is not about proving and demonstrating that we are actually honest and we are integrate, we are sincere about our work, but at the same time it is also to become effective, you need to be transparent and accountable. Now, one important tool what I feel, and from CSO partners we have been promoting this particular cause, is publishing annual report by the NGOs. Now, as you may agree with me that we give some annual activity report. Most of the NGOs give some submit some annual activity report to the register of the society or the authority of trust and whosoever it is. And also, we have an audited financial statement, annually. But at the same time, whether we have a proper annual report, for the multiple stakeholders, which is available in the public domain, which actually, represent our organizations in a proper manner to the different stakeholders. So this annual report is one of the most important tools. In most of the cases, as you can see that in India, if you have even 1 million organization, how many organizations really publish their annual report? Now, many people, when I discuss this thing, many people say that the small organizations, they cannot really spend money to publish their annual report. How they can spend so much of money? It's not a matter of money. It's a matter of how do you disclose, so that if you want to really disclose your information, disclose your achievement, disclose your failures, disclose the financial sources, and the way you have spent the money, what kind of impact you have created. I don't think it's a matter of a huge amount of money what you would require, but you need to have that intention, and as a culture you need to be transparent, so that you need to hold accountable to public. So, and more importantly, as I said, that annual report, it is not only in your website, glossy, nice printing, very, very expensive document, but at the same time, how you can make it a simple but transparent document, which is a readable document and understandable document by any people, any segment of your stakeholders. More importantly, the community and the society whom you are working for. So, as an annual report, the annual report provides pertinent programmatic, organizational, and financial information. Definitely, programmatic section, to include. What I would say that in CSO Partners website, if you see that we have actually developed a very small, crisp, but very helpful document, a guideline to prepare good annual report for the NGOs. So if you access to our website csopartners.org.in, and then if you look at the resource section, you will find a very nice booklet, a guidebook to prepare annual report. And I think, if you follow that, you will see that it is not a matter of spending a lot of money. And even definitely, most of the cases I see that the big organization, they hire a consultant to write their annual reports and other things. But definitely, if you see that, actually you can develop that capacity within your organization. And annual report is one of the most important tools that probably we should not miss out. And that should be available in the public domain in most of the cases. And definitely, I don't think that you'll have to print it so much and print it in a very, very glossy, nice, very expensive papers and all this. But at the same time, what you can do is that you can actually circulate the soft version of that. You can actually circulate the CDs, you can put it in the website, and there are different kind of website. If you don't have any website, by your organization doesn't have any website, there are different other domains where you can publish your annual report. For example, the NGO marketplace, you can actually create your profile, you can publish your annual report there also. So I would say that I am a great advocate. I am a very big advocate for annual report of NGO sector, and I would request you that this is something, the minimum what we can do. Now there is another debate in this. As CSO Partners, when we started doing a campaign about annual report for NGO sector, and we had launched an award, best annual report award for NGO sector. Then many journalists and many people started asking me that what is written in the annual report, who says that that is true or not. Now definitely we cannot give a guarantee that whatever is written in the annual report, that always being happening in the field. The great example, even in corporate sector, there are so many annual reports, but definitely whether those annual reports really represent the fact or not, that nobody knows. The great example is that if you look at Satyam's annual reports, they were the best annual reports probably, the way they had published. But at the same time, if we all know that what happened with Satyam, definitely those annual reports are not reflecting on the facts, what's happening in the business in reality. But the annual report is a tool what we can actually provide to the stakeholders. If anybody is interested, they have now a tool to validate that what we say we do or not. So that any journalist, anybody who is questioning the truthfulness of annual reports, they can pick up the document and go to the field, go to the organization and see that whether it is really happening or not, what we are disclosing, whether we are practicing that or not. So that in any case, as I said, that transparency is not accountability. Transparency is all about giving access to information, being transparent, being accessible. The informations are accessible. about the organization's operation and everything. But then when the information is available to people, then they can always see, if they can go and validate those information and see that the accountability is there or not. But when upfront one organization is disclosing information by itself, it creates a lot of confidence and trust in the stakeholders. So that there's a matter of, there's a when you work with perception, when you are upfront disclosing things, then definitely, and that includes your weaknesses and your failures. Definitely, that creates a lot of confidence with all stakeholders, including your donors. So I would say that a good annual report is a small but very good step toward establishing credibility of your organization. Second thing, the social audit. As I said, that in most of the cases, actually we are primarily accountable to the community and the society, but in most of the cases, consciously, we don't create that kind of information access for the community, the beneficiaries, the participants of our program in a proper manner, so that they can access that and they can create that kind of, they can also assess the validity of the information what we are sharing. So social audit, as we all know, that this is one of the most important tool to demonstrate transparency and also being accountable to the people. But and I think this is one of the biggest achievement what the NGO sector has really achieved in our country, to bring in the concept of social audit, and we engaged people very effectively to do audit of different kind of government programs and other things. But in case of the NGOs by itself, we probably many times hesitate to share that kind of information with people, and being accountable, demonstrate the same thing when it comes to our own sector. I don't know how many organization NGOs they really practice. I mean, there are very good NGOs. I know that many cases that NGOs also do social audit, and they actually give the information, and people engage people to have a reflection on the organizational performance and other things. But at the same time, in most of the cases, NGOs are little defensive in this kind of scenario. So I would say that this is another way. Probably it is difficult to create all kind of annual reports and other things, but if you engage the community from planning to implementation and to have a reflection on your program performance and other things, including in your financial performance, we can create a huge amount of trust and confidence within the people. And by creating that, if one organization, if your annual report or any document is saying that actually you have a kind of cycle of social audit, annual cycle of social audit or something like that, definitely any donor would be very much, will have a different kind of perception, and they will, it will create a lot of confidence with the donors also, or any other stakeholders. So I had quite a long stint with different funding agencies also in India. And from that perspective, if you look from funding agencies perspective, or even the donor perspective, be it business or the funding agency, one thing I must honestly confess, that there is a limitation if it is a kind of due diligence. It is a kind of monitoring and evaluation from the donor perspective, being a typical donor, and with all kind of mistrust that what money we are giving. They should not actually misuse that money. In that kind of mind frame, if you start, when we actually do the evaluation and different kind of reviews, we see that there is a huge limitation. I mean, definitely one donor agency or a business or anybody else, they cannot really keep that kind of check and balance within an organization unless and until people are, for whom the organization is working or supposed to work for, they are keeping that kind of, vigil, and they participate actively in that particular organization. So what I realized, and I started doing that long back, is that to inculcate the practice of social audit with the partner organization. so that what happens is that the donors and other people, they can actually take it for granted. They can be very much confident that if we can actually start that kind of practice, that NGOs will have to, share information and will have to actually institutionalize the system of social audit, then definitely it's a huge confidence you can create with the donors and other stakeholders. Now, when we talk about transparency, when we talk about accountability and other things, definitely one particular thing, what is probably the basic, is the visibility. Now, I might sound a little negative because it's more of a self-reflection. As I said that, I identify myself with the NGO sector. I would say the first thing of doing, being credible is being visible. Now, I know many organizations who are not, so identifiable and visible, but at the same time they remained somewhere, and they are also, getting fund. They are also supposed to, probably they are doing some work also. But at the same time, if you are not visible, in many cases I see that I found many organizations that, in many areas that, when you go to those areas, you ask people, actually very few people, even the local people, they know about that organization. That organization is not visible in that particular local area itself. And also definitely at the macro level, it's very hard to, find out those organizations who are working. So first of all, I think, you need to be visible and you need to be accessible from anywhere, and especially in this kind of age where electronically we can find out anything on the website, you need to be visible at the web world, and that is the first thing, the first important step toward building your credibility. Now, by building visibility, what are the essential elements? Disseminating information is key to building transparency, definitely, as we have discussed. Providing access to information to diverse stakeholders. Now, as we said that, it has to be appropriately, structured information which is useful for all kind of stakeholders. Now, if you are publishing an English, an annual report in English, definitely that is not an appropriate vehicle for transparency and visibility in the community. That might be good for the other stakeholders, but you will have to have a kind of local language version for that. Technology could be used to make information accessible to wider audience. As I said that in this kind of information technology, in this kind of age of information technology, definitely we can take the help of the technology to disseminate our information to the wider audience. Now, as we discussed before also that, what we would suggest that this can be achieved through having a website. Nowadays, having a website is definitely not that expensive. Though in today's participants list, I don't see a very, very small organization because it's an internet-based, webinar. But, there's a kind of reservation for the small organization toward technology. They are not so friendly with the technology, IT and all. So, I don't see that, and in fact, the smaller organization who in fact is more to be required on the website and to be visible are not on the website because they are not so friendly, and technology probably is not that much accessible to this organization. So, but there are different kind of supports available to help those small organizations even to be visible in the web world. For example, the NGO marketplace is there, Give India is there, so many other organizations are there who can actually make these organizations to be present in the web world. Now, for the medium and the bigger organizations, definitely I think that this is not a challenge. They can use the social media like Facebook, niche sites like ProPure, NGO Marketplace, retail donation platforms, Give India, United Way, Global Giving. As I said that, one thing is that definitely these organizations, Give India, United Way, Global Giving, they're mostly, retail funding platforms, but at the same time, they also actually give you a lot of visibility, because they are a kind of aggregating platforms, and they market that particular platform, you know, to a larger audience, so that being present on those kind of platforms, automatically you get the benefit of visibility through their marketing. Now, till now, what we discussed is that, how demonstrating accountability is so important, how being transparent and building visibility, and we see that accountability, transparency, visibility, these are very, very interrelated elements, when we try to create credibility of our organization. Now, there are different aspects, few aspects I need to raise before getting into the different NGO accreditation systems and processes, and what are the available organizations who does accreditation, and so on and so forth. So some of the very critical issues what I would raise today. One is that, definitely what I raised before also, the legitimacy versus representation issue. For example, when we saw that campaign, anti-corruption campaign in India by Anna Hazare. So definitely it is, all we agree that anti-corruption campaign, anti-corruption is a legitimate issue to be raised by the civil society organization. But then there was a huge question about representativeness of this particular campaign, and especially when they started participating in policy making. Now, whether policy making itself is a right or a responsibility of the representative of people, by that I mean the elected representative of the people of the parliament, or even civil society organization being outside of the political system and the governance system, whether the civil society organization can also represent people in policy making. I mean, these are the big questions. We see that the roles are changing. We see the different kind of influence the civil society organizations and other sectors, different kind of interfacing they are doing. But at the same time, probably at this point of time, we need to understand that whether it is a policy making role or policy influencing role. If it is a policy making role, then do you really call the NGOs a representative of people? If it is a policy influence role, then what are the different aspects, what are the different ways the NGOs can actually influence the policy? Now, why I am talking about this policy influencing and policy making so much is that there is a very thin line between political and apolitical activities, because when we talk about credibility, definitely these are very, very important aspects we need to understand. Now, many of the organizations, that takes to another very important aspect, take us to another important aspect is that the NGOs, in probably 99%, there will be very few NGOs, in fact, who will say that they are also they have a political motivation. I think 99.99% NGOs, they clearly say that we are apolitical, right? When we talk about policy advocacy, when an NGO gets into activism, okay, they are not probably involved in a partisan politics. They are not for or against any political party. But at the same time, most of the issues are political, at least theoretically. We cannot deny that the human rights issues can be discussed without any political element in that. So that we need to understand that raising those legitimate issues, and what kind of identity we create for ourselves, and how do we really disassociate ourselves from different political partisan lobbies. So that is a very, very important aspect, because as you know that in many cases, in last 2-3 years especially, in many cases we have seen that different organizations inadvertently got identified against or for some political lobbies, political parties in particular. And as an NGO sector, we thought that, this is something was unnecessary. Definitely, I'll not give very specific example in this, but I think, most of the cases, the NGO sector representatives or any people who are actually, any participant in today's discussion will understand what I'm, talking about, is that definitely, we see that last few years there are different kind of social campaigns, and it's a very good sign that, the civil society is becoming really vibrant. They're becoming very vocal. The voice is raised, and they are actually, very strongly interfacing with different sectors. But at the same time, we see that, to counter that, in many cases, what happens is that we try to identify themselves with different, political lobbies and parties. So we need to be very careful when we are talking about our organizational credibility. We need to be very careful that the organization, I'm not saying that the organization cannot. I mean, any organization in this country, it's a democratic country, any civil society organization, if they want to get identified with a particular political belief, definitely, or political party more, definitely, they are free to do that. But at the same time, we need to see that what kind of positioning we'll create and what kind of perception we create when we are doing a campaign. With that, another very important aspect we need to understand while talking about credibility of the organization is that ambivalent role the NGO sector sometimes play. When we talk about government, we challenge government about non-performance, or we try to actually influence different policies. We agree, we don't agree with government in many aspects, or even the business. Sometimes we protest against business, and sometimes we agree with business. Once the challenge is that when the NGOs are receiving money from the same government and the same set of businesses, and when you are challenging those same set of businesses and the government for different aspects, then you need to understand that there is a kind of ambivalence between the role and the perception of that particular organization. So when you are talking about building credibility of that particular organization, we need to be very clear that for what that particular organization is getting money, for whom, and for what they are actually raising their voice or standing up, and what kind of collaboration they're doing, or what kind of confrontation they're doing. For example, there are few organizations now internationally and very few in India who are talking about corporate governance. Now, if you think about one particular organization who is receiving money from the businesses, and also they are talking about corporate governance, definitely you need to understand, I mean, there would be a question that whether this particular organization is credible organization or not. Yeah. On one hand, what I'm trying to say is that it is not that all organizations will talk about corporate governance. It is not that all organizations will be confronting with the businesses and the government. There would be many organizations who will do that, many organizations will not do that. But at the same time, when you are actually getting associated with any government, any NGO, any other donors, in fact, it is not only government and business, even the international donors, you need to be very careful to see that which is the appropriate partner for you, which is even if it is a donor, and is that partnership really reflects your value system, what you are representing as a core value of your organization. Now, if you are talking about, say, genetically modified food, and at the same time probably you are also getting involved with that particular campaign, then definitely that too does not match, and that will not help you to. I'm not saying that I'm not taking a view on this. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that you should not work with genetically modified food or you should be against that. I'm saying, I'm just giving an example that might not help you to create your organizational integrity and organizational credibility. Now, another viewpoint what comes is that many a times, especially from the business sector globally, there is a view is that NGOs are not actually the stakeholders for the business sector. NGOs are actually the stake seekers. So that is there any direct, stake of NGOs? Do they share any stake with the businesses directly, primarily? In most of the cases, no, right? But the NGOs are becoming more and more prominent to influence the business practices in terms of collaboration or in terms of confrontation. Now, in many cases, one can ask the question that whether is it a natural stake you are sharing with the business, or you are actually trying to create a stake with the business organization. Now, if you see that you are working on behalf of the consumers and creating a consumer movement, now the consumers have a very direct relationship with the businesses, but definitely that particular NGO, the organization, a different structured institution who is actually using the consumers, theoretically, using the consumers, stake and interfacing on behalf of the consumers with the businesses. So in many cases, the business, strong business, lobbies, they challenge that the NGOs are not the primary stakeholders of the business community, but they're the stake seeker. One good example, another good example is that, many a times the NGOs have started talking about, say, good working condition, labor welfare, which are predominantly aspects dealt by the unions, workers unions, right? Now, many a times internationally I have seen that the labor unions sometimes think that actually NGO sector is, interfering in their subject, they're stepping into their arena. So, definitely the labor unions, they will have a very direct stake with the business community. It's a very, very direct relationship with the business community. But at the same time, when NGOs are getting into that, there is a kind of confusion whether the NGOs have really that stake or they're really stepping onto their toes, the union's toes. That is the kind of, another argument. So that, as we said that, the NGO sector in this kind of transition, taking a very different role. Now we'll need to see that in relation to the business sector, whether they are really the stakeholders, primary stakeholders of the business sector, or it is secondary stakeholders and they're the stake seekers. And the last aspect about credibility, before we getting into the NGO accreditation systems and processes, is the capacity. Now, we know it is a very obvious question that people think that, okay, NGOs intentions are good. Many people think that, NGOs are doing real good work, honest work, they are good people, good doers and all. But at the same time, the general perception people share about the NGO sector is that they are not having that kind of professional capacity. So today, I think it is very, very important to create credibility of the organizations, NGOs. We'll have to demonstrate that capacity through result of our work. I'm not saying that, NGOs are not producing result. There is a perception unless and until we really, be upfront and we are in a position to share the result created by the NGO sector. Definitely that perception would remain. So till now, I would actually leave some of the thoughts with you. One is that challenge, that dilemma between legitimacy and representativeness. The second thing is that how do we deal with that ambivalent role? Definitely NGOs will have to take fund from either the government or the corporate sector or any funding agency, but at the same time, how would you create that impression of credible organization who stands for its cause without any bias to any of these donors, though there is a kind of financial relationship as a sector with different sectors. The third thing is that, there is a time now we'll have to reinvent the NGO sector in the new scenario and try to see what are the stakes, different stakes they share with the business and the government sector. And there are new stakes what we are internalizing and we are understanding day by day. So we need to have a clear positioning in those kind of stakeholder matrix and try to see that what kind of stake as an NGO sector or as an individual organization we share with that in this particular scenario. And the last thing, definitely it is not about thought, it is about more of demonstrating and really, practicing, is that how do you actually, first of all, have a better capacity in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability of your program, and how to demonstrate that capacity to the different stakeholders, diverse stakeholders of NGO sector. Now with that, we'll get into a discussion on NGO accreditation. We'll discuss about different models of NGO accreditation, and after that we'll be open for questions and answers. Now if you see that different standard frameworks in terms of NGO accreditation, there are different models. If you look at the first, the left hand box, self-certification. So this is kind of code of ethics of the, this is a kind of certification process. What the organization, based on a set standards and norms, they do their own validation and they do certify by themselves. So it's a kind of self-certification process. Globally, there are different systems and there are different models of self-certification process. Two examples are this code of ethics of the Canadian Council of International Cooperation. So that based on their standards and norms, the organization can actually do the self-certification. Interaction preview standards. Interaction preview standards, most of you must be knowing that this is another set of standards and norms. So based on that, you will have to, in different aspects of the organization's operation, you will have to certify yourself. But there is a validation process also that based on your self-certification, that can be validated. Now the second thing is the peer review. Let us take the peer review process. It is, again, there should be a base of, whenever we are talking about accreditation, there would be, accreditation is against a set of standard and norms. Whether that is decided by the third party or that is decided by themselves, by the peer organization, by the federations of NGOs, that's a different aspect, but there should be a reference to a standard set of norms and parameters in terms of accreditation. So in peer review, we see that one organization, based on again an agreed upon set of standards, one peer organization reviews the other organization and they say that okay, this organization is conforming to a set of standards or parameters as they have agreed upon. Example, Maryland Association of Non-Profit Organizations, Standards of Excellence, Credibility Alliance. In a sense, Credibility Alliance is an Indian example. As you know, that Credibility Alliance is actually, strictly speaking, federation of different NGOs. It's an alliance of different NGOs. So that the set of standards, what they use for accreditation, it is actually an accepted and agreed upon set of standards, and based on that, that particular institution, that alliance, it's a kind of federative structure because it's a membership organization primarily. They, validate that particular organizations, or they assess that particular organization against those agreed upon set of standards. So these are the two examples for peer review. Now if you look at the third thing as accreditation. So accreditation is, again, this is a third party who will do the accreditation. So this third party, what they will do is that this is an expert body, this is a professional body, it's a neutral body. Independently, they will set a standard for this particular sector, and against those standards, neutrally and independently, they will assess that organization and give a view, a third party view, and accredit that organization. so that it is totally a neutral third-party view, a third-party set of standards, what they think that it is should be the standard for this particular set of organizations, and do an assessment independently and say that, okay, this is something this organization either conform or don't conform to this particular set of norms. So that is the accreditation process. The fourth process is rating and evaluation. Now, all these processes, in fact, the self-certification, peer review, accreditation, these could be, subjectively evaluative, or there could be a kind of rating process. Like BBB is Giving Alliance, Charity Navigators, there is a kind of rating evaluation. So they have a set of parameters. Based on that, say, in a particular scale, they will give a particular rating to a particular organization, that, out of 10, in a scale of 10, probably this organization in terms of these aspects stands at 8 or 9 or 7 or 3. So there is a kind of comparative model. In the accreditation, self-certification, peer review, there is no comparison. So that when one organization scores 10 in that rating and the other organization scores 3 in that particular rating, there is a kind of comparison that the organization who has scored 10, definitely they are more credible than the other organization who is 3. In other kind of organization, like if you take example of Credibility Alliance, they have two different sets. One is saying the minimum set of standards. Another thing they are calling it desirable set of standards. Now the minimum set of standard, if you can we can understand very well that if it is a desirable or minimum, whatever it is, now whoever is conforming to, say, the minimum standards, definitely these organizations are not at the same level, right? There could be a little bit of differences, and you are not in a position to, by that particular status that they are accredited as conforming the minimum standard, we were not a position to compare between 2 organizations or 5 organizations, that within that who are the best and who are the worst, or who are the better and who is the good, right? So rating has that particular thing, particular advantage, that you can compare between 2 organizations in different aspects. Now the CSO partners, what the kind of accreditation system we have worked on and we have launched is, it is a mix of, first of all, self-evaluation, so that we believe that the organization first should do an introspection, and with a frame of reference, with a set of standards, against a set of standards, they should look within and try to see that where they stand for, right? So that first of all, it is not about all of a sudden you go and evaluate and assess an organization, but the organization looks into yourself, the organization, and they see that where are the areas they should improve upon, so that if they do the self-evaluation today, they can declare that we will be ready for the validation, third-party validation, after 6 months time, or 1 year time. So that what they can do is that they can actually take little time to improve upon their system and processes, and then really to be open for the third-party evaluation. So that it's a kind of self-development process, it's an organizational development process, and also a mix of accreditation process. So that is the kind of system CSO partners believes in, and we have brought into. The second thing is that we have also got into a kind of rating system in that, so that it is based on self-disclosure, then it is a third-party validation of on the basis of the self-disclosure, and then it's a rating that, and in fact one organization can say that I want to first meet the basics, but in 2 years time I can actually get into the next level. So that based on that, this particular rating system is developed. So what I'm saying is that there are different kind of rating system in India. We have 2 major rating systems available, 2 major accreditation systems available. One is that Credibility Alliance. The second is what we say from CSO partners we have launched. These are all civil society organizations, launched accreditation system for the NGOs. I mean, non-governmental organization launched accreditation from for the NGOs. I will discuss that there is also a government attempt to do accreditation of the NGOs. Now, if we talk about the different models, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these different models? Now, the self-certification process, definitely self-certification process. If you are provided with a set of norms and standards, and you are doing, you are disclosing yourself, you are doing the assessment internally and actually disclosing yourself or declaring yourself that conforming to which set of norms and all, that would be low cost, easy to administer, because you are doing it internally, but you need to have a little bit of capacity to do that. Reflective and introspective process for NGOs, definitely, the first step toward building credibility is that, first of all, whether we believe in that set of standard and norms, and we are honest to look at ourselves and see that where we stand. Accessible to a wide range of organization, because it is low cost, and it is a set of norms, so it is accessible in terms of financially affordable for all organization. At the same time, it could be made accessible, so that when it is a service provider, a third party who is doing this particular accreditation, this kind of accreditation, they will have to have the capacity even to cover the number of NGOs under the accreditation process. But in the self-certification process, each organization can initiate their own accreditation process, so that it is accessible to a wide range of organizations. Now, if you look at the peer review, one peer to peer, again, we are doing it honestly. If you are doing it honestly and sincerely, it could be rigorous, and definitely, who knows it better than one organization, one NGO, that how the other NGO is functioning, if we are doing it in proper manner. It is a value through network. Definitely, it develops a lot of trust and confidence within the peer NGO group. But at the same time, we know that there could be a little bit of unhappy situations and unpleasant situations when one particular organization is reviewing the other particular organization. Again, in my experience, I had also launched this, but you need to be very careful when one peer organization is reviewing the other peer organization. We need to be very careful that how do we really do that, and on one hand, that organization who is being reviewed, they will have to be receptive to the feedback. On the other hand, the reviewer organization will have to be a little sensitive that how do they do the assessment or evaluation, or whatever the review. Now, if you talk about the accreditation generally is done by the third-party organizations or professional organizations, so it is extremely rigorous evaluation. Third-party validation provides strong assurance, so it's a kind of assurance providers what they do this accreditation. So for any donors and other organization, probably they will have a better confidence when a third party and a credible third party is validating your organization. Serve as a seal of approval and make it easier. It's like ISO, it's like CSO seal, it's like a credibility organization seal. So that gives you a better perception about your organization. Say on your website there is a seal of accreditation, or on your document there is a seal of accreditation. Definitely, that immediate trust to some extent is built in. Now, rating and evaluation, as I said, that parameters predominantly set by rating organizations, lends itself for comparisons and benchmarking for NGOs across sectors and geography. So it gives that one advantage of rating is that gives the opportunity to compare and do the benchmarking. Now, as I said, that rating and evaluation, that particular methodology can be used in accreditation, that can be used in self-certification, even that can be used in peer review, if we really want to make it crisper, measurable, and comparable. So that is what the value addition by this rating and evaluation system. Now, what are the existing initiatives to promote accountability in India? As I have already discussed few. CSO Partners Outstanding Annual Report Award, I have already mentioned that this is an award we had launched. Unfortunately, for last 2 years we could not generate much sponsorship for this organization, because it seems like it's a difficult proposition to we get fund for. But we had a very successful, I think, 4 years of this award previously, where in 3 different segments, for small NGOs, medium, and the large NGOs, the annual reports were nominated for this award, and jury panel, independent panel of juries, they actually assess those annual reports based on defined parameters, and then they were awarded. Accreditation by Credibility Alliance, as I discussed already, that Credibility Alliance is an alliance of NGOs. It's a federation, I would say, that by structure and by process, it's a membership organization. They have a set of norms. Against that, they do Credibility Alliance accreditation based on 2 sets of norms. As I said, that minimum and desirable norms. For any organization can actually opt for that. You can say that I want to now this time get accredited for the minimum norms, and because it's a small organization, or this is the first time we are getting into this kind of accreditation process, and gradually you can get into the desirable norms. Accreditation is based on assessment by CA assessors. They have a group of assessors who does that, trained assessors who does that accreditation. Accreditation provided based on recommendation of accreditation committee. So there is a separate committee which actually, so it's a set of assessors and an independent committee. So the assessors, based on the assessors reports, the committee will give that accreditation. Now, CSO partners, as I said, that CSO partner has also launched an accreditation process, and as I said, that it is first of all based on self-disclosure, so that it's an internal development, it is an organizational development process, then self-validation by a group of assessors. It has also a set of, it has also an independent committee which will actually, which is disconnected from the assessment process or any capacity building process to avoid any kind of bias or conflict of interest, and they work independently so that they can actually give that accreditation certification. And then we have Give India. Give India, though it's not an accreditation agency, it's a retail funding agency, and primarily they refer to the norms of Credibility Alliance. Probably it is little more rigorous than Credibility Alliance, because Give India actually vouch for this organization, whoever enlisted with them for retail funding. Now, this is one major development what we need to discuss, and we need to, as NGO sector or the business sector, as a non-governmental, non-government sector, whether it is business or NGO, we need to really little bit of thoughtful. Now, Government of India is planning to bring NGOs under regulatory mechanism to make them accountable, and in government, by their policy, voluntary, the policy for voluntary sector, policy of voluntary sector, they have decided to have a government accreditation system for NGOs. And initially, that was initiated by CAPART. As you know, that CAPART is in little bit of not in good position nowadays, so that CAPART is not active now. But it was initiated by CAPART, and definitely government is considering, and it has also started a process of developing an accreditation system for NGOs. Now, one aspect of, one way of looking at that is that if government is doing a rating or assessing organization and vouching for their credibility, then whether the civil society organizations are looking at in an independent manner. So whether the government should, ideologically have an accreditation system for the NGOs. Now, definitely we have a government-sponsored NGO system in Pakistan, but definitely whether we think that the same kind of, and different organizations, if you look at that civil society organization, state of civil society organization nowadays, in present days, across the countries, so there are more and more government restrictions and government controls in direct and indirect ways on the function of non-governmental organizations. So the question what we need to think about that whether the government should have that kind of regulation on the civil society organization, is that really help, will that really help the non-governmental organizations to maintain their independence and also to act neutrally in, even raising the voice sometimes against government. But definitely I think, the government will launch some accreditation system, and we need to wait and see that what happens with that. Now look at the existing set of indicators broadly, the parameters against what the accreditation assessment is done. Now to start with our own indicators, the parameters of CSO partners, we look at the governance aspect, organizational capacity, financial management, program management, marketing and fundraising, and many more. These are the key aspects what we assess for. As I said, there is a self-assessment. I mean, I have already discussed this. This is a self-assessment based on self-assessment tool. Staff of various functions and senior management is involved in the accreditation exercise. Submission of the assessment along with evidential proof. On field assessment of NGOs along with accreditation rating and note on areas to be improved upon. Accreditation renewed at stipulated interval. So once it is accredited, in most of the cases actually it's the same. Once it is accredited, definitely it is not accreditation is there forever. It has to be renewed either yearly. In some cases it is in 2 years time. But definitely the accreditation is subject to renewal. Credibility alliance, as I said, basic and desirable norms. The minimum and desirable norms. Desirable is more advanced and stringent. The norms cover identity, vision, objective, achievement, governance, operations, program management, HR, accountability, and transparency. Now, if we get into some international examples, interaction, PVO standards, as I mentioned that this is something more of a self-assessment, self-accreditation norm. It is based on governance, organizational integrity, finance, communications to the US public, management, practice and human resources, program, public policy implementation. Now, one thing we need to understand, if you look at all these set of norms, there are few subjective aspects and there are few objective aspects. Now, when we're talking about that, if you look at, take example of the second indicator in interaction PVO standards, the organizational integrity. Now, it is little bit of a subjective, aspect, because it's very, very difficult to understand an organizational integrity by third-party organization. But when you are getting into a self-disclosure, when you are saying that I am actually, practicing organizational integrity, again, I mean, there is a level of subjectivity involved in that. So that we need to understand that, when we talk about organization and assessing an organization, this is a human organization. So there would be many objective indicators, but there could be a set of subjective indicators. Now, if you take some of the other things, what I have already discussed, like credibility alliance, if you take example, like identity, yeah, vision, one can say that, okay, I have a vision, but then, whether this vision is good, bad, appropriate, non-appropriate, it is my vision, and, as a third party, whether they will look at and say that, wait, what, how appropriate is that? There would be little bit of element of subjectivity in that. Like accountability and transparency. Now, accountability, how do you measure? Transparency, how do you measure? Is there any kind of, an optimum level of transparency against that you can measure? So even in CSO partners, there will be some subjectivity in all the assessments. For say CSO partners, when we are talking about marketing and fundraising, now how much money one organization should spend, or the percentage of money in the total budget should be spent in fundraising. If you even have a very good fundraising system, if you have a very good, accountable system, etc., etc. So there are a bit of subjectivity in NGO accreditation system. Now, if we take the Maryland Association of Nonprofit Organizations Standard of Excellence, there are 8 guiding principles and 55 individual performance standards. ISO 9000, I mean, this is a very, very popular set of standards. Customer focus, leadership, involvement of people, process approach, system approach, management, continual improvement, factual approach to decision making, mutually beneficial suppliers relationship, etc. Now, in most of these accreditations, see, there are 2 core things in the all accreditation system. It is about the process and the system. No accreditation process can assure about the performance of an organization, how they would perform, but they can assure about the capacity of process and the system, right? Now, BBB wise Giving Alliance is Alliance Standards for Charity Accounting, Governance, Oversight, Measuring Effectiveness, Finance, Fundraising and Informational Materials. Okay, with that, before getting into looking at the questions what you have raised probably already, few questions I would raise today. One is that, is accreditation merely a donor? The first question is accreditation merely a donor requirement, or is it for NGOs, organizational development? Now, the primary question is that, is it donor driven? What kind of accreditation system is desirable for the NGOs? Is it donor driven or self driven? Question 2 is, should, and I would request you to share your thoughts with me through mails, because these are the very, very pertinent questions, and we need to actually have a longer discussion and deliberation on all these questions, so that as a sector we should have some kind of positioning, agreed upon positioning. Should accreditation be undertaken by government or corporate? So when we talk about a third-party accreditation, remember that they are not representing government or corporate. They are third-party professional body of assessors. But when a government starts an accreditation system, you see that civil society organization should be accredited by the government organization, or even a business organization, or even the donor organization. They should be accredited. Donor organization can do the due diligence, do an assessment with, and make decision whether they will donate or not, but whether they should start doing the accreditation. Should accreditation be a one-time effort to be looked at on a continual basis? Now, once accredited, whether that credibility remains with that organization for the lifetime, or it should be a continuous development process, and it should be a gradual progressive process. Should accreditation be done by neutral third party or NGO networks and federation? Now, there is a big question again. As we said that whether it should be done by the government, now we are saying that when NGOs are accredited by themselves, by their federations, like if tomorrow CII starts doing accreditation for the businesses, so is it something desirable? I'm not again taking a position, I'm asking a question. Is it something desirable, or something who is third party, who is not a federation of NGOs or businesses, a third party which is not representing interest of the reviewee organization, should do an independent accreditation? So these are some of the questions what I think the NGO sector and even the other sectors should actually now ponder on, and try to see that what kind of positioning we can create on this. Now, with that, I will look at the questions till now. Yeah, some people are complaining about the sound quality. I think it was not good to some people. I hope it was later improved. We often call NGOs as voluntary organization. Mr. Vishwajit Panigra is asking this question. We often call NGOs as voluntary organization. What is the definition of voluntarism in this regard? Is an NGO is purely voluntary by nature? How can it sustain its operations particularly when the basic nature of their organization is project based and dependent on external funding? It's a very interesting question. Now, definitely we understand that voluntary organizations and NGOs, what I think is are not exactly the same, connotation they have. Voluntary organization, more and more now people are using as CSOs or NGOs, because voluntary means voluntary, so that many organizations still now actually people work with that organization on voluntary basis. So when we talk about voluntary organization, definitely there is a sense of voluntarism in those organizations. But if it an NGO who is working professionally, I would hesitate to call them voluntary organization. And the professional organization, definitely I don't think that with empty stomach they should work. But there are many people, there are many good work done by many noble people who are doing it voluntary organization, who are doing it voluntarily. So that I think these are two different kind of organizations. How can we demonstrate accountability? I have probably discussed all this. How can we demonstrate accountability? Okay, the website web ID for the annual report format is that CSO Partners Civil Society Organization. CSO Partners, you can actually see it on my slide, csopartners.org.in, csopartners.org.in. In that you will get a resource section. In the resource section, you just try to find out, there would be one guideline on annual report. And that's quite a good guideline. I would say that you please use it, and you can download and you can even share with anybody. Next question. Somebody asking is Mr. Manna Viswas, that how donor agencies do social audit. I mean, definitely donor agencies cannot do social audit for the partner organization or implementing organization, but what they can do with the partners organization, they can agree to, I mean, the partner organization, to make them the partner organization to agree have a social audit system integrated in their review and monitoring system. So I think Mr. Manna Biswas again asking, accountability is equal to social audit and visibility. No, I would say that, yeah, it is transparency. Accountability is definitely transparency about your performance, about your capacity. So it's accountability, and also how do you demonstrate that? How do you manage the perception? As I said, it is actually complex, mix of all these elements. We have discussed already all these elements. So I would not actually make it straightforward social audit. It might be a third-party audit, because many aspects probably through social audits cannot be done. So definitely it is about a mix of many other complex elements what we have discussed today. Barring a 5% provision for administrative costs, the Companies Act 2013 does not mandate any spending on terms of that other than program cost, where from an NGO get funds to finance its non-program activities such as maintaining the organizational credibility of it. Yeah, it's again a very good question. That first of all, I don't think that developing organizational credibility requires a lot of money. So it is, and also definitely when you are talking about, when you get a grant, definitely you get your administrative costs. And this 5% administrative cost, I don't know who, I mean, where it is written, but 5% was more capacity building cost in the CSR as it is stipulated, in the Companies Act as it's stipulated. And definitely in many program costs, like, if you want to do a social audit, don't you think that it should be, can be budgeted in your program cost itself? when you want to publish a program document, it can be budgeted in the program budget itself. So that, I don't see that, if it is the organization is serious about developing credibility, it requires a huge amount of money. Even having an annual report, I don't think that that this is what, when we talk about annual report, many organizations say that, oh, it requires a lot of money. I don't think that publishing an annual report requires a huge amount of money, and especially nowadays it has become so cheap. So I would say that it is definitely some money is required, but if you want to do that, many aspects can be budgeted in the program aspects, and definitely it can be managed within the available resources. It's a kind of vicious cycle. If you don't allocate resources in terms of money, time, capacity, human resources, and etc. in building credibility, it will lead, it will not get you more resources, so that more visibility, more credibility, and you gain more confidence and trust, and that probably will actually get you more resources. So less resource, if you don't allocate resources in that, definitely it will not help you to generate more resources. If I talk in financial terms, it looks like that. You are saying too many important things, simple slides would have helped. Yeah, thank you for the feedback. You are always, and you are also saying that I might forget some of the things said later. Definitely, if you think that you need to know some of these aspects, or you need to actually have a discussion with me, you can always send me a mail. I can actually remind you on that, and I can probably, give some of these points, reinforcements to you, Mr. Biswas. Ms. Sutapa Biswas is saying that most efficient professionals do not see NGO as a viable career option. How can we professionalize NGOs? It's a big question. It's a very valid question. Unfortunately in India and also in other countries also have seen that we need to attract more and more talents in this sector, but definitely it is a better situation than before. I would say that now it is improved a lot. Many senior leaders from even corporate sector, they are willing to come to NGO sector as volunteer, or even many people actually leaving the NGO, corporate sector, business sector, and joining NGO sector for a different cause, and to work for a cause. Recently, fortunately in CSO partners, even 2 days back, somebody from a very senior person from a corporate one company has joined. He has left his job and joined CSO partners. So I would say that the situation is improving. People are now getting more and more interested about the NGO sector, and people are actually finding some value of their association with some organization, and definitely NGO sector has a different value, so that we'll have to have that value proposition, and definitely we can get more and more talents about that. NGO sector cannot give a lot of money, definitely, never in future also, whatever the money you generate, but definitely you cannot compete with even government or the business sectors in terms of finance. Then what would be the differential factor? The differential factor should be the value proposition, what you would be offering to the people whom you want to whom you want really work for you. Mr. John Amalraj is asking, will CII arrange for a task force meeting with all the participants attend these 4 webinars, because the participants are from various sectors which could help each other to collaborate? Well, that's a very good proposal. I will actually take this forward with CII, and I will try to see that how we can actually, if we can do that kind of create that kind of platform for collaboration with all the participants. It might be, if it is not a physical, at least some kind of virtual platform which we can create, So yeah, thank you so much for your good good suggestion. I will take it forward with CII. Many times the NGOs does not have the resource, hire people who can work professionally, and hiring out good report. Volunteering initiatives most of the time does not work. Mr. Deepak DPK Babu is asking this question. As I said that yeah, definitely financially you cannot give so much of money to people, but you know that's why we'll have to attract people with value proposition. And if we can create the value proposition, I don't see that any dearth of. But and definitely, you know, let us look at positively. I think the thing is you know, improving. It is improving now. Number of good talents are really coming to the NGO sector. Now, Mr. Babu is again asking, we are certified by Credibility Alliance, empaneled with Tata Institute. We are there on Give India. We bring our annual report every year. What else would you recommend? You are doing a lot of work. So if Credibility Alliance has done the accreditation, the Tata Institute, you are empaneled with Tata Institute, and also listed with Give India, I think you have done already a good work. And it's difficult for me to suggest without knowing your organization, you know, in a proper manner. So if given, I mean, if I get an opportunity, definitely I will give you more suggestion about that. Good afternoon. I thank you for your valuable inputs, which I believe I will be boost up our activity. Basically, I am speaking from Silchar, Assam, and our organization is Deshbandhu Club, having FCR, ATG, 12A, etc. and Credibility Alliance certificate. We have two. We submitted several times proposal to ONGC for boost up PWD's children through special economic status, but no response has come forward their end. What will be the next step we have to take near in future? I mean, this is definitely is not. I mean, this non-response is not due to your bad credibility or low credibility. It might be something else. So I really don't exactly know this particular case. So you'll have to talk to the ONGC guys and see that why they are not doing. Probably they are not interested on this kind of programs. And I would say that, you know, in many cases you meet the right. My experience is that you should meet the right person in person. Then probably you will get a good response. Can you share aspects points on which accreditation done? I have already shared that. Is accreditation necessary for mandatory for CSR? No. It is not mandatory, but it is good to have. Can NGO apply for accreditation to CSO? Yes, they can. How much does it cost to get accreditation? It depends on the size of the organization and the kind of organization you to be accredited. For any foreign donation, do NGOs require to have any government funding prior to that? For any foreign donations, do NGOs require to have any government funding prior to that? It is not required. It is not a requirement, but it is desirable. I mean, people will like to see that track record, but you know, it might not be government. Even if you have different other partnership, then I don't think the government partnership will have a better credibility than any non-governmental partnership. What is the difference between NGOs and CBOs? I mean, it's a big question. Definitely CBOs are also NGOs. CBOs are community-based, smaller organization. I mean, that is a kind of connotation accepted widely. NGOs are any NGOs. CBOs should also governmental. Any governmental, non-governmental organizations are NGOs. How many Indian NGOs go for accreditation? I have no idea. There is no data, consolidated data. Collaboration between the NGOs and corporate is the purpose of all four webinars. So assistance introduction between attendees should be assisted. I will take forward this question, this suggestion again to CII. If they can actually connect you all, that would be great. Articulating our work for report is a challenge. Can someone help as a volunteer? You know, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I have seen many organizations getting volunteers. You know, you can, why don't you see, these are small things. You know, there are so many colleges and universities of journalism, and different kind of students are available. You know, probably you can get a bunch of students to do that. You know, get some interns from journalism institutes and all. So, you'll have to just find out a way. Is it necessary for an implementing organization to be non-profit by nature and face many difficulties in maintaining transparency and accountability and remain credible? Cannot a for-profit organization implement development projects effectively and effectively at the same time remain credible and following? I think both credible and non-governmental, I don't find any difference between the impact and work between a non-profit and profit organization. It's a matter of one organization does not share its surpluses to a group of people. Another organization is actually, they are reinvesting the money in the work, and the other organization is sharing the profit. So I think that it's all the same, but I would differ. I don't think that even being a credible organization, they have the same difficulties, same challenges being a profit organization to ensure credibility as a non-profit organization. It might be different set of challenges, but I won't say that it is easier for a profit organization, it's difficult for a non-profit organization. How many empanelments, say, with Tata Institute is different from accreditation in relation to getting CSR funds? Well, Tata Institute was actually, identified as a hub for the public enterprises, and I personally believe, to be very frank and honest, you can differ on this. I personally believe that that was something what I didn't agree with, that Tata Institutes and the kind of process of Tata Institutes empanelment that creates any kind of credibility for any other donors. It's a kind of just matter of, I would say it's more of a requirement than a credibility, establishing credibility with Tata Institute, because you also know that it is not a proper assessment system of the it's just based on your self-disclosure. You are just giving with a limited number of points, against limited number of points, you are giving some information about our organization. It is being empaneled, so I totally don't agree with that kind of process. With that, thank you so much, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and all the best. And I would also, take your request. It is a very good request somebody has made, that I would request CII that if we can stay connected after this webinar. Thanks again. Thanks on behalf of CII and CSO partners.